Yeah, hi, folks. Evening and welcome. Cheers for joining me. It's Connor here, sport and exercise psychology consultant at Sport Guru. I'm going to be hosting a series of webinars over the coming weeks. This first one I've titled Combating COVID-19 Mental Fitness Takeaway Tricks, Episode 1. So this one will hopefully be the first of many, and we're going to look at using some principles from wider sport and exercise psychology, but also alongside some real cool stories of human endurance and performance where people have overcome uncertainty and adversity. And this also just basically goes out to everybody really, but with a particular focus, I suppose, on athletes who find themselves without a court, pitch or course at the moment, as well as the coaches behind the scenes who are supporting them, your sports science staff, could even be key workers who are fighting this virus head on, and just about anybody and everybody who's been affected by this crisis. So, yeah, I'm going to hopefully sort of come up with some cool tricks that we can all try at home and, start sort of incorporating them into our daily practices. So, yeah, let's get started. The order of play for this particular webinar. So I'm going to look at peeling back the layers of fear and what we know as a fear is this sort of modern mechanism, but how it's got a very ancient sort of interpretation, and how we respond to it and interpret it is exactly the same as how we used to with a saber-tooth tiger in the bush. So I'm going to look at a fun animation that kind of describes that, but also bring it back to the present moment with the fear, the stress, and the anxiety that surrounds us all with this pandemic. But I don't want to get over-consumed by the negative, so I'm going to flip the idea of fear and stress on its head through the idea of eustress or positive stress, but also as like an attentional focusing, as a narrow focusing, but also as like a get up and go mechanism. So, we're going to kind of pardon me, I'm going to look at that. We're also going to look at some of Martin Seligman's work. So he's the godfather of positive psych, and some gratitude practices and daily routines that he used, and we're going to try and start getting them across and embodying them as well. We're also going to, that dovetails nicely, onto like the breathing techniques. Those of you who know me know that I love the Navy SEAL kind of box breathing techniques. So I'm going to hop out of my box for this one. And we're going to look at more about the pranayama. So that's some yoga breathwork training with some really cool sort of benefits and some light-hearted breathing exercises that have a really sort of resounding impact as well. Again, alongside that, we're going to look at kind of restructuring our goals away from that kind of that process, away from that outcome mindset, because we've had a lot of our future events postponed or cancelled. So we've got to kind of bring it back into that process and task mindset. And we're going to kind of move those goalposts and get a bit of structure through the present moment as well, and some accountability, doing that with our teammates and checking in. We're going to delve slightly into exercise. As we know, massive benefits of exercise at the best of times, let alone now in this crisis, in terms of the endorphins. The benefits of green exercise, what that does for your mental health. Blue exercise, for those of us who are lucky to exercise by the coast as well. But also, more importantly, I'm interested in grit or grit training. So these are daily practices that have a bit of novelty around them. They can be quite simplistic or complex, but I'm just going to introduce some exercises that I know are good, and then a bit around the theory of why we do them. Some of you might be doing them already. We're going to look a bit about grit practices as well. So I thought no better place to start on the concept of fear than with Bethany Hamilton. So for those of you who don't know Bethany, Bethany was surfing out in her outdoor playground out in the ocean at the age of, I think it was 13 or 14, and she suffered a very traumatic accident. So she suffered a shark attack, a tiger shark. She lost her arm in the attack. But amazingly, she was back on the board 1 month later, doing her thing. Within a year, she was back doing national surfing competitions. So, I mean, just an amazing kind of embodiment of that human tenacity and grit. And I love this quote. So Bethany says, courage doesn't mean you don't get afraid. Courage means you don't let fear stop you. So essentially what I take from that is that Bethany acknowledged it, and not acknowledged the fear, and acknowledged that she got afraid and is afraid, and everybody gets afraid, but she didn't let it define her or determine her next move or her next step. She almost put it aside and then used that energy just to kind of move forward and putting that behind her. So I thought that was an amazing quote to get us rolling. Now, I said we'd be looking at an animation of the fear response, so here we go. This is introducing Gronk and the saber-tooth tiger.
Have you run away from a saber-toothed tiger recently? Maybe you haven't. But the stress response you feel when you are late to work or the growl your stomach makes when you haven't had anything but an energy bar and coffee in the morning is the same stress response we had when we were cavemen. That stress response is called fight or flight. Grunk is a real-life caveman. He goes to work hunting saber-tooths and rabbits for his family. Unfortunately, the saber-tooth chases Grunk on occasion, and his physical and emotional stress levels go way up. When this happens, Grunk's body's intelligence kicks in to help him escape. His heart rate goes way up, his blood pressure spikes, more adrenaline is produced, and the body moves the blood away from the digestive tract and into the muscles, as digesting food isn't a priority at that moment. Grunk eventually does escape and rests at home, and after 15 to 20 minutes, his body resets and begins to operate normally again. Now, your body doesn't know the difference between running from a saber-toothed tiger or rushing your kids to school. Your body's stress response is triggered in both situations, so your blood pressure, heart rate, and food digestion is the.
And we're going to revisit the idea of creating our own grunt cave in a second, but I thought I'd move that on slightly. So let's go on. Yeah, so what we've encountered there, we've got the idea of the ancient brain not being able to sort of process this exponential change and crisis at the moment, a change and crisis that then brings about it all of the emotions associated, which we just introduced. So your idea of shooting really far ahead and catastrophizing. So you've got your stress, you've got the idea of uncertainty. So uncertainty essentially is that idea of apprehension or anxiety. So being worried about when's my next football match, or when am I going to get back in the office? All very natural human responses, and also the idea of fear. So fear, again, is pretty debilitative on the immune system. It's debilitative on the digestive system, and then by proxy, it basically decreases motivation and performance as well. But again, it doesn't necessarily just have to be a negative. We can use fear almost as that kind of, because it narrows our focus, we can use it as an attentional focus. So what we had there in the animation is the idea of adrenaline being reduced, and a little bit around the neuroscience there. Obviously, a little disclaimer, I'm not a neuroscientist, but I just find this stuff fascinating. So fear increasing cortisol stress response. It also increases norepinephrine. Now, the fascinating thing about norepinephrine is it's the same chemical that works with curiosity, and it also works with anxiety. So if we can kind of stack up on those curious moments, those sort of wow, intrigue, or learning moments, then we can kind of tiptoe around the anxious moments. So I thought that was really, really interesting, and we're going to look into that around structure our day and doing these exercises, but also obviously about that stimulus. So the idea of fear presenting a stimulus, and these breathing exercises, these relaxation exercises, and gratitude training just train us to kind of process that fear, that stimulus and response. How can we look at the pause in between those two constructs, basically? And yeah, we've got the. And yeah, what we had there, looking at the fight or flight response, we've also got the idea of there being a negativity bias. Now, the negativity bias essentially is linked to those kind of emotions, the idea of, your anxieties and your fears, acting as quite a quick response. And what that does is that just basically keeps us alive, it keeps us alert. And then what it does do as a sort of caveat to that is it slows down or reduces our positive thoughts, our ability to conjure up positive thoughts. So when we're immersed in all of those kind of those emotions that we've touched upon, we haven't really got time for again that creativity or that gratitude. So we want to kind of flip the switch on that a little bit. And yeah, the way we can flip the switch on that is looking at a little bit around the positive psychology research. So what we had essentially is a study that Martin Seligman sort of conducted with nearly 4,000 participants. And what he did is he looked at the kind of the human super strength characteristics. So your idea of buffering against adversity, challenging situations, courage, optimism, interpersonal skill, work ethic, hope, honesty, and perseverance. What he did is he just came up with like a 3 good things exercise. So these 3 good things exercise could be what brought a smile to our face today? What kind of act of kindness did you do today? What did you achieve today? And that's going to link into the grit exercise a bit later on. But if I use that as a personal example, just dropping off food for my isolated parents earlier certainly put a smile on my face. And what I want you to do is kind of add that emotion to those moments as well. So I thought an overwhelming sense of just being quite helpful, being able to help where I could. Actually, a bit of gratitude in that moment that, I actually was in the position to go out and get a few groceries for mum and dad who are stuck behind at home. So, yeah, just writing them down could be anywhere. Just a little scribble gets you kind of, getting into that positive mindset as well. And what he actually noticed as a result of that is that in his study, 4,000 people, as I said, over a course of a week, it stabilized depression, it improved life satisfaction, and wellness scales increased by 2% in just a week. So yeah, I thought that was really really powerful. And the fact is, it's fairly simple, it's mechanical, and it's evidence based stuff as well. So yeah, a little bit of gratitude training. So yeah, I gave you the examples there. What brought a smile to my face? What act of kindness did we do today? And what did we achieve today? Those are just examples, but you could do any three good things, and then we can move on from there. And I'll leave those two quotes from Steph Curry and Federer just to chew on for a little bit as well. And it's I just think it's so important just to try and really find those sunshine moments. And I was talking about it, that ability and that habit to kind of seek out smiles, because that's the kind of energy that we need at the moment. And yeah, it doesn't mean that it's always going to be that way, and it doesn't mean that we can always have a positive and negative ratio, or positive to negative ratio, but we can certainly try and bring in some of these skills and try and flip the switch on what is obviously a pretty tricky time. Okay, and then what that does is that moves us on to some breathing techniques. So what I did is I came up with a quote this morning. So this is the idea of trying to water our plants. So what I said was the current COVID situation has us all spending more time in our heads, i.e., our own gardens. With that in mind, I think it's time that we started watering the plants. So essentially, if you want to use the example of Grunk's cave, going back into the cave, making it look pretty, making it look nice, watering our plants, paying attention to our mindset, our headspace, because we're up there a hell of a lot of the time at the moment. Be it because we've got a lot of stress, anxiety, or purely because we're just bored because we've got four walls around us. These are the kind of things that we can do to kind of water those plants. So pranayama, prana being that kind of your prana, your life force. So taken from some yogi exercises. Again, we've got the breath of fire here. So the breath of fire is equal inhalation and exhalation. Some really, really good benefits. Yeah, if I do a little demo, so it's sort of in, and what that essentially is you're starting to sort of automate the inhale, and then the exhale is conscious, and it's got to be quite powerful. And the benefits of that one specifically are that it's increased O2 to the brain, so more clarity, more focus, and also it's part of that stimulus response training. It's getting you to kind of train in depth of oxygen as well through a bit of hypoxia. So yeah, really helpful. And then the other one that I quite like, we've got the All Blacks showing us a little example there in the bottom left corner, but the lion's breath, a bit of a sillier one, but this one is just like a release. It's a tension release. It's getting rid of yesterday's whatever annoyed us yesterday, basically. So in order to make a fool of myself, I'm going to do a little demo of this as well. So you put your hands on your knees, loosen off the shoulders, and the same thing is that inhale through the nose, but this time you're going to do a proper lion's exhale. So it's in, and then exhale like a lion out. There we go. Made a real fool of myself. But yeah, do that 10 times in the morning. Share it with your friends. That alongside a little espresso gets us all going. So yeah, a few techniques there. You might not like them. There is loads out there where that came from. We've got the box breathing technique that I've done with my clients before, as well as Wim Hof's methods. But yeah, have a little look at kind of yoga with Adrian. She outlines these in more detail. But just as on a serious note, I think these kind of techniques, anything along mindfulness training, breathing techniques, this shouldn't be seen as just a tick box exercise. I think this is imperative at the moment. I think it's so important, and you shouldn't just feel a need to do it. This is almost something that needs to become a necessity, just to kind of keep our plants in check and staying happy and healthy in our caves. So yeah, moving on from that. Have a look at this little clip even from Invictus. Sorry, a little technical fault there. Here we go. This should play now.
Why not? Alex, We've become more than just a rugby team. And we might as well get used to it.
Is this you speaking? Or Mandela?
You know me better than that. You know, times change. And we need to change as well.
Yeah, you'll have to excuse Matt Damon's little South African accent there, but yeah, I actually love that quote at the end. So times do change, and we do need to change alongside them. So for us to progress and bounce back onto the pitch again strongly, we need to kind of restructure and reshape. So I love the little meme in the background there, changing the goalposts, and we can kind of do that again by taking down again those perfectionistic tends, because I mean everybody has been humbled by this. We're all on a level playing field. I don't think there's any point in time using our energy to strive for perfectionism. Let's look at a bit of maintenance. Let's look at kind of staying in shape. Let's look at staying alert. How can we look outside the box as well? How can we think about our vision training? How can we think about maybe things that we were missing during the season? So it might be mobility work, it might be nutrition. How can we seek out to specialists who we haven't been talking to for a while? How can we ask extra questions from our coaches or psychologists even, or anything like that? It's just restructuring. But on that idea of structure, I think it's so important to kind of plan tomorrow today. So set out your stall. I'm going to talk about in a minute a little bit more about the serotonin, the endorphins that are released when we achieve targets, when we achieve certain things in the day. So that's why it's so important to get those structures in place, get that rush of dopamine, and then we can move on, we can move forward. So and it's easier, obviously, as we know, to do that with a buddy. So get some accountability, get your mates in there, check in with them and say, oh, have you done your mental training today? Have you done your physical training today? Sort of really think more about maintenance and staying on top. Keep it kind of burning rather than sort of burning out. Just thinking about that, really, really important at the moment. And alongside that is obviously a chance to take stock, a chance to kind of reflect properly, sort of looking at what's gone well in the season so far, and also how were you preparing for the start of a season? So what did you have in place? What were the loopholes there that we could have ended up filling? So yeah, it's just a chance for kind of really, really changing our goals and setting them, embodying them as it say there, making sure they're aligned with our values. Like what do we really want now in this time of kind of isolation, and then getting out and living it and doing it. And just going to come up with some exercises in the next slide as well, alongside that. So yeah, what we've got here again is introducing the idea of grit training. So we've got a quote here from Stephen Kotler, who sort of characterized this term. So we train people to automate grit. We call it the habit of ferocity. Literally, the ability to instinctively and automatically kneel in at any challenge before you even realize you've done it. When you've had a really hard day, worked your ass off, and made huge, life-changing, impactful decisions and didn't even realize you were doing that. That's ferocity. That shows you've automated the kind of risk-taking, leaning in, and challenge adaptation you need to succeed. Yeah, so I really like that as a definition, and I think what I took from that is the idea of living with passion and purpose, getting that sense of resiliency through perseverance. So really just going at something until you make it automatic or autonomous. So and we can kind of develop that through a series of exercises or daily exercises. So examples of that. So examples of that, and I think there are some really, really good examples going out amongst clubs at the moment. So if I use a personal example, holding a plank whilst trying to read a book, doing keepy uppies on some gravel, could be anything really, sort of just going through like a jigsaw puzzle, trying to add an extra second to your box breathing technique in the morning, doing lateral passes with like your sibling or your friend or whatever at home, practicing some vision training techniques. Whatever it is, just to try and get in a bit of that challenge mindset, a little bit of pressure into our performance, even when we don't think we're performing, when we haven't got our hockey stick in hand. Talking of hockey stick, obviously you can do keepy uppies with a hockey stick as well. So anything like that. Basically, these are great exercises. And again, what that is, these are little tasks we set during the day. When we achieve those tasks, we get that dopamine release, we feel good, and then we move on to the next thing. So as long as we kind of tick off our grit exercise, that can set out our stall for the rest of the day and get us moving on really, really well. So if you need any more resources on that, shout out to me, and we can get thinking about some some pressure training games, some constraints and stuff. So yeah, so just a chance for saying thanks for tuning in for this one. Next week we're going to look up on the kind of concepts of controlling the controllables. We're going to look back into some more anecdotal stories of human performance and inspiration, and also the idea of kind of moving forward and using the kind of emotions that we have at the moment with a bit of creativity and a bit of flow as well. So what I'm going to go with is we're going to leave you on actually for this next one. Is a song that I've come across in the last few days. And I love not just the beat of the song, but more of the kind of take home message. So, what I want to kind of get across, this is a bit of all round gratitude, really. So, the idea that there are people everywhere. Yes, there's been a massive loss of life and it has been tragic, but there are people everywhere that we can be so grateful for who are kind of fighting this disease on the front line. And yes, still standing, still smiling, and still dancing. So I thought I'd leave us with this little clip, musical clip at the end, just to kind of give out our gratitude to those folks, really, and leave this little webinar on a buzzy foot as well when it loads. Feel free to dance in the background for a minute or two.